Hey everybody, my name is Lou. I'm with Real Parents, Real Answers, and welcome to our Hangout on Air with Dr. Popkin. We have with us today, we have Dr. Michael Popkin from Active Parenting. Say hi, Dr. Popkin.
Hello, glad you're here.
And we have a Real Parent. We have Dejanira. Say hello, and do you want to give a brief introduction to what you do?
Sure. Hi, my name is Dejanira Aponte, and I am the coordinator for the Family Formation Program in an all-boys school.
All right, great. And once again, my name is Lou. I'm your moderator. I am a real parent to a, of course, adorable little 7-year-old girl named Sophia. And I'll be moderating the conversation. And we are going to start with a question from Brian Chung, who unfortunately couldn't be on the Hangout today, but he did submit a question. I'm just going to read what he wrote in his email to us. And Dr. Popkin, if you will go ahead and answer when we're done.
Okay.
Brian writes, I have a 7-year-old boy who gets easily frustrated and has disrespectful outbursts. He lacks confidence and has social anxiety. He seems to have bad character. He puts others down, including his 5-year-old sister. He's a follower. He seems to use poor judgment and copies peers. At most times, he loves playing with his sister. He's good at reading, building with Legos, and just learned to ride a bike. He has 2 loving and dedicated parents. So, Dr. Popkin, we'll turn this over to you. What advice do you have for Brian for his 7-year-old son?
Well, it's a lot of ways this could go, Brian. I'd like to know really what a typical day is like in your family. I have a suspicion that your son maybe has 2 overly loving and dedicated parents, because he sounds a little bit like a child that maybe is used to getting his own way a little too much, but can't really tell without asking him more detailed questions. So let's take a couple different scenarios. Let's say that is the case and that he's a little bit used to people waking him up and serving him in the morning and making sure he gets to school on time, and but it goes too far. You know, some kids, we call them sometimes a kind of a pampered syndrome, where they're used to getting things a little too easy, and they need to develop more responsibility and more of a sense that I can do it myself, Daddy. So if that's the case, then what you want to do is pull back a little bit, encourage him to do more on his own, and to build on those strengths that you mentioned. You know, one of the ways to really get kids to improve is to encourage their strengths. You mentioned reading, building with Legos.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Popkin.
Brian
right now. Hey, Brian.
Hi.
Dr. Popkin was just getting to your question. I just read it on the air.
Okay,
how about
thank
this? Brian, if you want to go ahead, you can ask the doctor your question live. It seemed like Dr. Popkin had a couple of questions for you. The Hangout started, and we are live right now. So,
okay.
You, Brian, you want to go ahead and ask Dr. your question?
Oh, sorry about the noise. Let's wait for that nice motorcycle to pass.
Yeah, go ahead and ask him your question, Brian.
Okay. So I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. My 7-year-old son is the one I have issues with. I would like to try to build character in him. One of the issues is he plays well with my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, but when he's around his cousins or someone else who he would rather be with, he totally throws her away and gives her bad treatment. So that's one issue of throwing others away, totally forgetting about others when there's someone else of interest. Another issue is, which I think sort of comes to self-esteem, is putting her down in general. Let's say she draws a nice picture and he starts to pick on it, or if there's anything For a lot of reasons, he'll be really put her down and pick on her. Which I feel if he had higher self-esteem, that would not be an issue. That's the second issue with him. And a third issue with him is being assertive in when he's around people other than family, being assertive and confident. It takes him a long time to warm up in new situations. He tends to be very shy or reserved when he's around people other than those who he's around every day. So I raised three different issues there with my son.
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. And since this is a chat, let's see if we can make it a little bit interactive. But you mentioned a couple really key terms in your question. One is character, that you wanted to develop more character in your son. And really a lot of parents miss that point, that the real purpose of parenting is to prepare children to survive and thrive in the kind of society in which they're going to live. And in order to really do that, they need to develop the characteristics or the qualities of character that enable them to do that. And in our society, that tends to be qualities of character like responsibility, cooperativeness, respect of self and others. And one that I think your son probably needs a bit of a dose in, and that's courage. It's very easy for kids, particularly young kids, to get discouraged, to lose self-esteem and courage. And we know that that tends to lead to misbehavior, sometimes putting down others, sometimes just rebelling. But we need to look for ways to encourage him and at the same time teach him and teach all kids really how to do the basics of getting along in the family, like from getting yourself ready for school to doing chores to listening to mom and dad. So one of the things I like to do with parents is to hear what a typical day is like. You can tell a lot about what goes on in a family by just hearing what happens. So just let's take just a couple minutes and go through a typical day in your family, Brian. I think you mentioned you were a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
So who's the first one up in your family, I guess?
Either me or my wife.
Okay. And then what happens next?
My wife goes to take a shower. I go to start preparing breakfast.
Okay.
And then while I'm getting the breakfast ready, my wife starts getting the kids dressed, and then the kids come downstairs one by one and come to the breakfast table.
Let's stop for a second. Who wakes the kids up, or do they wake themselves up, or
usually my wife wakes them up, or they wake themselves up.
Okay. And then getting dressed, is any problem with him getting dressed in the morning, or?
Sometimes there is, yeah. Sometimes it's they want to play around instead of getting dressed or stay in bed.
Okay. The daughter too? Your daughter too?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're getting breakfast ready, and your mom and your wife's getting them ready, and so do y'all have breakfast together then after that?
No. Mostly the kids have breakfast by themselves.
Okay.
Sometimes I sit down a little bit with them and have something with them. Usually I'm more getting stuff ready, lunch ready.
Okay.
Packing lunch.
Okay. But they go to school, right? Don't they after?
Yes, they do.
Homeschooled?
Yes, they go to school.
Okay. Any problems getting off to school? And do you drive them, or do they take the?
My wife drives them, and then she goes to work because it's in the same direction. No problems going to school really. I mean, getting off to school as far as separation, no.
Okay. And then after school?
After school, I pick them up. Go home, have a snack in the car, and get home. They unpack their backpacks and lunchbox, put them on the kitchen counter, and they play around a little bit. And then my son kind of starts doing his homework on his own, while my daughter mostly plays around.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any problems getting his homework done?
There's sometimes a little bit of problem. He has a little trouble with focusing. He tends to do a little bit of homework, go off and play, do a little bit more, go off and play until it gets done, and so it drags out longer than it should.
Mhm.
But he has a little bit of focusing issue.
Okay. He's in what, second grade?
He's in first grade.
First grade. Okay.
Yeah.
Any negative reports from the teacher, or is he pretty cooperative and keeping up with his work pretty well?
He's very cooperative with his teacher, always been cooperative, and he's keeping up. He's doing well in school. I do a lot of work with him at home, so that helps him. He's ahead of his class on reading, and he's doing well in school.
Okay. How does he respond to you when you're helping him with his schoolwork?
I think that's one of the questions, one of the comments that I'd made in my question submission is that he's very fussy overall. So if he's a perfectionist, I mean, sometimes he's a perfectionist. Like if he's with his work, if he's drawing something on his homework and there's something that he cannot erase or get just right, he will often have a tantrum and he won't want to work with me. He'll say, I want to wait till mommy comes home and have her help me do it because it's less stressful. And it used to be at the beginning of the school year or first grade, it was like that every day. Now it's mostly he can get his homework done before she comes home. But he has this perfectionism sometimes, I think, especially when it comes to his schoolwork. So sometimes when I work with him, he'll be frustrated and easily tantrum. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's one of the hypotheses I had just from hearing your question. Was that maybe this does sound like a child that could be too perfectionistic, too hard of himself, and that can lead to becoming frustrated easily and giving up. So that the characteristic that I talked about earlier about courage, it's important to be able to make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, not become devastated by them, but to pick yourself back up and learn and try again and do better the next time if you can. So with kids that tend to be a little perfectionistic, sometimes they need some permission to accept that good is sometimes good enough. In fact, I had a child in therapy years ago that I gave him a homework assignment. I said, your parents told me that you're really good at things. He said, yeah, he's really excited about that. I said, except for one thing. He got kind of concerned. He said, what's that? I said, well, it doesn't sound like you're very good at making mistakes. He was kind of confused by that. I said, well, mistakes are for learning, and when you make mistakes, you have an opportunity to learn how to improve your performance and do better in the future. So if you're not okay making mistakes, you don't get to learn from them. So I gave him as a homework assignment to make a mistake every day and report it to his parents. And then by the time he's my age, he can knock the side view mirror off his car like I did this morning and not be too upset by it. But you don't want to do that again. So, how perfectionistic are you, by the way?
I think I'm a little bit, but I don't think I'm obsessive about it. I mean, I think I'm more protective than most parents, but not to the degree where I won't let him go off with someone else who's watching him. So I would say I'm a little bit perfectionistic. I'm sorry. Did you say
perfectionistic?
Perfectionistic. I think I'm a little bit that way.
Yeah. Okay. Because like I said, sometimes you catch it from a parent or who knows, but it's the upside to perfectionistic is these are people that want to be successful and they're usually hard workers and want to do well. But sometimes we have to lighten up a little bit and not put so much pressure on kids that they feel like anything less than excellent. And not necessarily perfect, but even anything less than excellent is not good enough. In our active parenting programs, we actually look at ways parents inadvertently discourage their children. There are 4 or so main ways they do that, and one of which is to have too high an expectation, to be too perfectionistic. And instead what we want to do is to flip that over and let kids know that we value them for themselves more than for their achievements. Sure, we want them to do well in school and to achieve in what they try, but they need to know that the bottom line is that whether they succeed or fail, or whether they wind up in the limelight or the line-up, that we still love them and we're glad they're our children. And so we need to get that message across them in different ways. There's something else that may be going on with your son. In fact, I would suspect there is. It's kind of tough on us oldest children to be dethroned by the second child. They come along later, and suddenly all the attention we got as the firstborn goes over to the secondborn, and that, if you're not careful, that can lead to some resentment and some of that feeling like I got to stay number one. She's catching.
Yeah, that's definitely the case here. We have the case where number two is very, very bright and talented. So I mean, he's going to deal with this all his life.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing you can do about that is encourage, of course, them cooperating and playing together well, which they do a lot of times. You say when they're together. Still has maybe some resentment. One of the other things that sometimes is helpful. Do you and he spend much one-to-one time together?
Not that much, and it's something I've been trying to work on, but I need to build it more.
Okay, what I would give you for a homework assignment would be to carve out some time, say maybe 10 minutes a day, maybe longer on a weekend, where maybe your wife takes your daughter and does something with her, but you just do something more fun with your son. Not homework time, but just something that maybe the two of you can find together that you both can enjoy. Maybe the building with Legos you said he's getting into. Maybe you can make something together, or reading together, or bike riding or something, just that's fun, and then where you can focus on being encouraging of him. In other words, not time to be critical or to work on his behavior, but just to have fun together and to a lot of attaboys and just enjoying each other's company. I think that might help some too. And then of course, all families need to do some things together as a family also. So I don't mean for you to with your daughter. You could have some one-on-one times with her as well. But I think your son would benefit from that too.
Right.
Anybody else wants to add? Deyanira, I know that you work with parents also. Do you see anything that you might want to suggest?
I think it's very important what you just said, the time that that parents spend with their kids individually. It cannot be replaced with anything else, because it's the foundation for encouraging or disciplining them in a good way. All those things are going to work if you have a good relationship with your kids. So spending time with them is really, really, really important. Yeah. So.
Great. Yeah. Brian, anything else you want to add or say?
Any other comments? I mean, about when there's someone else who he's interested in, that he doesn't totally throw away his sister or the others in his life.
Yeah, and that comes into that character quality called respect. How do you treat people with respect? Not just when you're with them one-on-one, but when you're in a group. That might make a good topic for a conversation for a family meeting. I try to encourage parents to start talking to their kids when they're young about matters like respect and courage and anything from how do we behave when we go to grandma's house or the grocery store. So kids know what's expected and what's considered positive behavior and what's not so positive. So a family meeting, again, not to be critical, but to just kind of share thoughts and feelings and kind of help them understand what respect is about.
All right, good.
Yeah.
That was
Okay,
a
thank you very much.
A family meeting about something like that?
No, we haven't. I've thought about it, but I think it's would be a good thing.
Sounds like you have some company over there.
Yeah,
that your
that's
daughter?
my daughter. Yeah, she's homesick today.
Okay. Uh, the other reason you want to start having family meetings early is that you can also, as you go along, you can also slip in some meetings about things like why smoking is bad, why uh, may not. I mean, anything really that you might want to be able to get your values across to them, from not smoking to not drinking to later, even sexuality is a topic for conversations with older kids. To get them used to talking together and to getting your point of view across that way,
Hold
you
on,
can
Leah.
be
Wait for them.
persuasive. Okay, I'll let you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's
Right.
part of your son's problem too.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well,
Okay.
Brian, we really appreciate the question and the call. Very
Thank
good
you very
stuff.
much.
This little one here, 7 years old, very similar issues. So that was really good to hear your advice,
Yeah.
Dr. Popkin.
Sure, thanks, Lou.
All right, Brian, I know you had to head out a little bit early,
Okay.
so we appreciate you being on the call.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be
Welcome.
following
Thank you
up.
for joining us.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to turn it over to Dejanira, and she is going to ask her question. Take it away.
Thank you. Dr. Popkins, I would like you to tell me, how is discipline related to self-esteem? And does it help to build children's self-esteem and character?
Yeah, great question, Dejanira. Let's start off first by thinking about what self-esteem is. If you really just take the words apart, it means to esteem yourself, to think well of yourself. And we know that that drives all kinds of positive qualities like courage and positive behavior. When you're down on yourself too much or all the time, it's easy for the behavior to become more negative because you're looking for the easier ways to get your needs met and your goals met. What happens is very often when a kid has low self-esteem and lacks courage and then starts to misbehave, they get a lot of punishment, a lot of verbal negativity, and it makes them feel worse instead of better. So they tend to want to act out more. So it's really easy for negative discipline, harsh, punitive, aggressive discipline to actually lower self-esteem and character and really just becomes counterproductive. On the other hand, a lack of discipline, kids that grow up where they're never told no, where the parents are afraid that that'll damage their self-esteem, or they can do anything and get away with it, those kids also wind up lacking self-esteem because they don't learn what the rules are. And that's a very frustrating way to live life. In fact, there's a story I used to tell about the first person that was put to death in the gas chamber after the Supreme Court of the United States reinstated it back in, I think this was the 70s or the early 80s. And I read an interview about him, and the interesting thing was he didn't try to go through the appeal process. He just asked to be put to death, and so within a year of his conviction, he was executed. And they asked him why in the interview he didn't go through the appeals, and he said, it's almost a direct quote, he said, because I grew up in a family where no one told me what I could and couldn't do, and for me, life has been a living hell. And it was so bad for him that he just assumed to be out of it. They also interviewed his mother, and she was saying up until the end, well, he was a good boy, he just needed another chance. Well, what he was convicted of was beating to death a mother and 3 small children. So he clearly wasn't still a good boy, but you can see where she probably all his life had been taking up for him and denying his mistakes and not disciplining him and not offering the limits that all kids need. They need to know that, okay, I'm powerful and I can make choices, but there are limits to that power. And their parents have to come in and be able to be the disciplinarian in the family, but to do it in a way that's loving and firm and not harsh and punitive. And that's a little tricky. That's why we teach parenting classes, because a lot of the old parenting skills don't work as well anymore. They are too harsh and too aggressive. And a lot of the newer parenting styles, which is to back off too much and let kids kind of learn from their own misbehavior, doesn't work very well either. So when you have discipline that's firm and friendly and respectful, but yet it sets limits, kids have the best opportunity to develop self-esteem and courage and then that kind of fuels more positive behavior. The other piece of it we were talking a little while ago with Brian was kids also need encouragement. You know, self-esteem really comes from feeling a sense that you're lovable, that you're capable, and you have things to contribute to others. You know, if you can get those three things down, to belong, to learn, to contribute, you've got a real good chance to develop self-esteem and courage and success in the kind of society in which we live in. When you don't feel like you belong, when you don't feel very lovable, and all you hear is negative from those people that you love and care about the most, your parents, your teachers, your friends, that makes it very difficult to have the foundation necessary for learning and contributing. So we want to start there. We want to start teaching parents the encouragement skills, building on strengths, accepting children for what they are, not just for what they achieve. Hearing a lot of attaboys and attagirls and you can do it, and breaking tasks down into small steps so they can get success along the way. And that's the relationship we want between discipline and self-esteem. We want them to know that there's limits, but we encourage and love them within those limits. We'll discipline, and there are consequences and other ways to discipline if they get outside those limits. So, what's your thoughts, and what would you like to add about that? I know you have experience with both discipline and self-esteem with kids also.
Yeah, I was turning off the mic because there's noise close by. Where my experience has been that the extremes, where parents have very, very high expectations, and the kids' behavior, you perceive by the kids' behavior that they don't feel loved by who they are. They're just pressured to do and right. Succeed. Then we have the other extreme. I'm so sorry about the noise. The other extreme where kids are not expected to do. I mean, to succeed, which is, I think it's also bad for them because they need to know their parents' expectations. So I've been working with both extremes of that situation. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, it is tricky being a parent. It's not just one size fits all children. We know that all kids need discipline and all kids need encouragement, but how you discipline a particular child may vary from your 7-year-old to your 5-year-old. What they respond to in terms of logical consequences or iMessages or family meetings will vary. What one child sees or hears as encouraging will be different than what another child hears as encouraging. Sometimes that same child at different ages and stages in their life will hear the same thing as encouraging or discouraging or just silly. You know, when you get to be a teenager, sometimes a side compliment is better than a straight-on compliment. With other kids, a straight-on compliment is great. So you need to kind of know your child and know that, okay, I want to encourage, I want to be supportive, and I want to discipline, I want to be limiting. You know, those things are almost in contrast. We want to encourage them to spread their wings and try new things and to develop their spirit and their energy, but we need to help them understand there's some limits to that. There are rules in society, and if you break those rules, there are consequences. And you can learn that when you're young. You know, when you're an adult, you're a whole lot better off. You're a whole lot better off all along the way. So, okay, do we have other questions or anything else you want to add?
Thank you very much for your contribution, your response.
Okay, great. We have a couple more questions that came in through our contact form. The first one sort of circles back around a little bit to Brian's question. Also, it's a question that I wanted to ask about this one, doing her homework. This one is from Teresa Sillo, and she asks, I have a 13-year-old boy who has a hard time getting into a homework habit. I've tried so many techniques, and none of them have worked. I've talked to him about that responsibility, but he seems to ignore it. Do you have any suggestions?
Okay, Teresa, I love that you said homework habit. The thing about homework is once you develop a habit, and we are creatures of habits, that can be good and that can be not so good when habits lead us into some negative habits or even addiction. But a good positive homework habit relieves everybody in the family, because once kids get into that habit, they really take responsibility for their own homework. You have to do very little. I think with both of our kids growing up, our daughter, who was the older child, never needed a whole lot of coaching with homework. She developed a habit very early on and really went to it. With our son, it took a little bit of work when he was in second and third grade, but once he developed that habit, it took him all the way through college. So that's where you want to do it. And so you don't want to get caught in the, I'm going to sit there and make him do his homework and do it with him, and even worse, do it for him, so that he learns to be dependent on you for his whole life. You want to help and support with homework without taking over. Sometimes that may mean requiring some limits and even a little discipline, but it's got to be a bit of a delicate balance there. In the new Active Parenting, the fourth edition of our program for parents of 5 to 12-year-olds, we have a whole last session now about how you can help as a parent with your kids' academic success. And one of those areas is how you can help them develop a homework habit. There are 4 particular keys to that you might try with your child, and if you're not already doing it, to give it a try and see how it works. The first is to help him find a good homework place. You know, everybody doesn't do homework the same place. Some kids prefer to be at their desk in their room. Some might prefer to be at the kitchen table or the dining room table or someplace else. As long as it's not in an area where they're going to get distracted, and certainly not in front of the television or, you know, other media. Wherever you and he can work that out is fine. It just needs to be a regular place, so that becomes associated with homework and becomes part of that habit. Second, with kids who are having trouble getting their homework done, to develop a regular study time is important. See, you know, sit down with your son, and I don't remember if you said you were a single parent or as a family, but sit down together and determine when's a good time to do homework. Some kids prefer to do it right after school. Sometimes prefer right before dinner. Some after dinner for an hour. And the school can tell you how long a time they should take during homework. At 13, you know, an hour may be enough, but the school can give you some guidelines there. But agree that it's going to be done during a certain time, and during that time, the house is going to stay quiet. You're not going to have TVs on, and it's not going to be a lot of distractions. But it's a time for homework. And in fact, the third step that we suggest is to actually make that time a time for learning for all family members. It would be great when parents can model that learning is a lifelong event. It's not just to get through school. It's something that can make us more effective people, to live richer, more satisfying lives. So whether you're reading the paper or, you know, watching the news or working on a parenting program or whatever it is that you want to do during that hour, develop something, or just some casual reading, just some reading for pleasure at that point. Do something that helps your own learning. Let's see. Let's see. It seems like there was one more I had there. Yeah, a homework to-do list. Anybody that's been successful in life has learned the value of a to-do list. In fact, there's a great story about 100 years ago, a successful businessman hired a consultant to come in and follow him around for 2 or 3 days and see if he could recommend something that would make him even more effective. And so the consultant came in, and at the end of the 3 days, he said, the only thing that I can see that might help is I'd like you every day, first thing in the morning, write a list of things you have to do that day. The businessman said that sounded like a good idea. How much do I owe you? And the consultant said, try it for a couple weeks. I'll come back. You can pay me what you think it's worth. 2 weeks later, the consultant came back. The businessman took out his checkbook and wrote him a check for $25,000. Now, that's kind of a classic time management story because it underscores the value that a good to-do list has in getting things done. It takes things out of memory. You no longer have to wonder and wake up in the middle of the night trying to remember, did I do that? Or will I remember to do that tomorrow? And with kids at 13, it's so easy to not remember homework if you don't have an organized system for writing it down and checking it off as you do it. And another thing happens as you check it off, that's a kind of an encouragement in itself. I finished that, that's off my list. I finished that, it's off my list. Finish that. That's a kind of a self-reinforcement that is great for kids to start developing. So, and if you need to, if your son still has problems, you may have to work something out with the teachers where you find out what his homework was so you can check his homework to-do list and make it sure it's accurate. And if you need to go over his homework to make sure he's doing it and not just kind of halfway doing it, you can do that too. But once you do those 4 things, use a lot of encouragement to focus on the positives of what he's doing. If he's not doing something full tilt, even find a positive way to say, you know, I like the way you got started on this, but I think if you put a little more work into it, you'll like it even better. How about taking another 15 minutes on that? So, you know, don't just give him a rubber stamp, but help him appreciate that hard work and doing a good job. You know, maybe not a perfect job, but a good job is important in life. So those are some ideas that have worked for a lot of other parents. Maybe you'll find that some of those work for you too. Lou, back to you.
Thanks. Just making sure my microphone was unmuted before I started talking. Great, thanks, Dr. Popkin. That was great. We have one more question from Lucretia O'Neill, and she asks, how can I build self-esteem with my son who has mental health issues such as bullying, failed grade, and lack of social skill? Kind of a loaded question. I was wondering if you can give some high-level pointers to Lucretia.
When you get kids that are very discouraged and their success has fallen and their self-esteem and their courage has fallen, it's a very hard road to build them back up. And so you've got to first be patient. You've got to first understand that this is not going to happen, you know, in a week or two. This may take all year to get him really on the right course. But part of what you want to do is to break down things into small steps so that he can have successes. And you can start anywhere. You can start with school and a certain subject so that he starts to get better at something. You can start with bullying, you know, talking about how we treat others and why. I don't know if she's saying that he's being bullied or he's the bullier. But if he's being bullied, then that's a whole other can of worms, because it depends on how severe the bullying is and whether you want to intervene as a parent. If it's severe bullying, you need to. You know, if he's being physically bullied or even psychologically bullied to the point that it's significantly destructive, you need to set up an appointment with a teacher and go in and talk to the school about it. If it's just a little bit of bullying, then you may be able to talk to him about how to handle it. But you need to do that in a way that uses effective communication skills. And effective communication, when children own problems, is a whole set of skills. We actually break it down into 5 skills: to listen actively, and really means tune in to what the issue is. You can talk to him about what happened in school today, and really get into not just he bullied me, but what happened, what did you say, what did he say, and really try to understand it. And the second step of that is to really listen with a feeling heart, so that you're really trying to empathize with him. What was it like being in his shoes today at school? You know, not to pity him, but to empathize, to really get a sense of, you must have felt angry, or maybe you felt hurt or scared or frustrated. When we can respond that way and kids can get the sense that we're on their side, that we're feeling their feelings a little bit, that opens them up to really talk about the third step, which is, what could you do next time this happens, or even this time, you know, if you need to make a decision about how to go back and handle something, and help them look at their alternatives. What could you do? What else could you do? And the potential consequences of each of those. Well, what would happen, or what might happen if you tried that? You know, well, how would that work out? Well, what else could you try? What might happen if you try that? So you're really working through the different alternatives and likely outcomes that he could try. Fourth step is to encourage, to find things to encourage about his skills and his ability to handle the problem, maybe based on how he's handled similar problems in the past, or just even something like, I know you can do this, or something, but be realistic about it. Don't blow it up if it's not there. And then the fifth step is to follow up later, after he's had a chance to put it into practice, whatever the choice was that he came up with. Ask how it went. And if you need to go back through the 5 steps again, do. But you want to be an ally and to be able to support and help him think about how to handle things. And again, if they are severe, like the bullying could be, then you need to get in there and have a meeting together with the teacher and enlist other, while we're on that, list other professionals in the community to help. When you have a child that's got some significant problems, don't try to be this solution all by yourself. Work with the teacher particularly, and maybe the school counselor, and maybe there's a group at your child's school that can help with social skills developments. A lot of schools have that. Or if he's going through something that's been weighing on his mind, a lot of times after divorce, kids will need the extra support that a support group at school can offer. So, if you need to ask the pediatrician for some professional counseling recommendations, or the school counselor can help you with that also. Don't be afraid to get the help that you need or that could benefit your son. Maybe you don't even need it. It just would be a plus or a benefit. Other people in your community, sometimes a youth group leader at a church could be a tremendous help to kids that need a place where they feel good about themselves and they're succeeding. I remember one girl that was having tremendous trouble in all areas of her life because she was overweight and really felt teased a lot. And I asked her, she was about 16, I said, well, how did you get through that tough time? And she said, I was in a choir. And that always felt good because I could sing well and the people really were nice to me in there. And it was just that one place where she felt like she could be successful. And what kids do is very often is to build on success. You want to find some place for them to succeed, and then they can grow that into other places as well. So, again, anybody want to add to that? Anything else?
Sort of recap, you suggested start with one thing that will help build their self-esteem.
Yes, and encourage it. That means breaking things down by small baby steps and encouraging progress. Don't wait till they get all A's to encourage school. If they're starting to read a little bit, encourage their reading. And, if they're getting one math problem right, encourage that. Hey, way to go! You got that one. Let's try another one. So it's the successes and the encouragement can really help boost them out of what we sometimes call a failure cycle.
And then to recap your 5 steps that you number 1 was listen actively. Number 2 is listen with heart. Number 3 was address what you can do next time this happens, or this time if it's a current situation. Number 4 was encourage them, and number 5 was follow up later.
Pretty good. Yeah. Again, there's more to it than that, and you've got to practice it. So that's the tough part. That none of these things just come automatically. But if you'll practice and you'll work on even yourself, if you work on just listening with feeling a little bit, try to empathize and understand what your child's feeling. So often a lot of us, particularly us guys, we want to jump right into the problem solving. Let me help you solve the problem. I'll tell you what you should do next time. That kid says that to you. You say this right back. Well, you might have a good idea, but if he doesn't feel like you really care about his feelings and what he or she is going through, there's a tendency to want to kind of turn you off and discount what may be good advice. So start with establishing the rapport that, yeah, I can understand how that must feel. And use a word to describe it. They scared or hurt or angry. Or if you're empathizing with something that turned out well, hey, you must be really feeling great about that, or proud of yourself, or a metaphor or something.
All right, we are approaching the 45-minute mark of our broadcast here. Dr. Popkin, any closing thoughts on today's hangout?
No, I appreciate Dejanera being here today, and Brian, and curious, maybe well, of course, we're going to be talking to the choir now, but if some of you watch us on delayed broadcast on the website, you might let us know if it would be better to have these in the evening. That would make it more accessible to some parents. Or to send your questions to the website, the Real Parents, Real Answers website, and we can respond to you there through my weekly blog or through some other means.
Yes, absolutely. And we also have info at Real Parents, Real Answers if anybody wants to drop an email with any suggestions. We'd be happy to hear them.
Great. And thank you, too. I appreciate your hosting as always, Lou.
All right. Thank you, Dejaneir. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And Brian, also, thank you for submitting your question and facilitating that discussion. And of course, Dr. Popkin, as always, thanks for the advice. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye, thanks.